Greetings, dear friends. I hope you're in a good mood, as we will need it. We are moving on to the next section, or we will be developing a search feature, a game search, which is located in our header. When you click on the search icon, a pop-up opens and it looks as follows. That is, the first step, when opening by default, we have a search form and the latest or maybe random ones, some games. Next, when typing a query, while the first request to the server is being made, we will show an animation that is empty placeholders. Then, when some response comes back from the server, we will display what it has returned to us. If it cannot return anything to us, then we consequently return an error that there is nothing, meaning a notification, not even an error. And we show some either themed games or just the latest or random games. We will decide which games to show when we reach this step. So this is what we need to do to implement. Where did we stop? We stopped. Let's switch to the dark version at the point where we created a block for the latest news. We sent these changes to the server. I merged them with the main branch. And now to start working on this search, I need to create a new branch. Remember, I already told you that tasks need to be divided into short tasks. I will not switch to the branch with the header now to merge main into it, and only then start. This is not the correct approach. For this option, I need to create a new branch now. Name it, for example, search option or something thematic, and work in it. So let's move to the code. In our code, we switch to the main branch. I need to download everything from the repository. And I will create a new branch. I will name it like this. And now I can start writing code. Let's close all the files so they don't get in our way. Regarding the structure. Oh, I'm glad. Which files? Now we will finally work in the directory. Core game store. We need a separate file where we will write the core code related to games. Therefore, in this main core game store, we will connect the files. Let's do it. First, we will create this file, create a directory include. In this directory, we will create a file, games, core.php, and we will load it. When clicking on the search icon, a pop-up should open. This pop-up will have an HTML body. Therefore, we need to load this body onto the page. Somewhere at the end of this page, we will load it using a hook. So let's move to the newly created file. We will create this hook. Let's call it game. Photo, search, pop-up, and specifically this file. Here we do trimming and embedding in the dark. Next, we need a hook so that all the HTML I will write here gets loaded onto our page. I can use a hook, webfooter. And In the footer VIP, I will connect this callback. Therefore, everything I write here in HTML will be embedded in the footer. Let's check this out, but besides this class, I will also write another line. To see these changes on the page, refresh the page. So we have an error. It means the file is named GameScore, but should be named GameScore. Scroll down the page and see that at the end of our site, the HTML we set is loaded. That is, essentially before closing the body, we pass HTML using this hook. Let's fill this body and see what elements are present. So essentially we will have a container for closing, for the close icon. Next, there will be a container for everything. What do we have there? We will also set a scroll on it, since there can be many elements here, and so that we have a scroll here, therefore there will be a separate container, meaning a header, a form, and another container for these elements themselves. Let's go in order. First we will have this closing container. I will assign an ID to it. Close. We'll make one common container. In this common container, I will create one container for these three elements, for the label, for the input, and for the text, and for the elements, I will create another empty container, since we will be dynamically loading into it. That is, in the HTML layout, we will not have these games preloaded, because it creates unnecessary load. It's unknown whether the user will even open this section, and we will only load these games when the person clicks the search icon, meaning if they find it, then a request will be sent to the server and we will receive these games in response. Until then we will only show a few HTML lines here, and that's it, meaning we won't generate such a large body with games here. Let's create this container. For the metadata, so to speak, we'll call it a search bar. It also uses a wrapper, you see, so we will define it too. We have a class with these styles. Inside, we will have a label. History. Let's use for the label next search form. In this form the type is text. We'll set an ID and set a placeholder. We will handle this form with JS. We can set the name, title, and placeholder. Next, this text we use on a simple paragraph. It's not a heading, just a simple paragraph of a section. So I'll just assign it a class. And by default, I pass the value. So we have basically completed the upper part, and the last one will be an empty container. An empty container for all of this. For the search results, so I can call it a network. Cut, flag, and inside I will add another div so I can attach a scroll. And we will have a separate scroll in this block. And by the way, we will also need a separate wrapper here, since we attach this wrapper to the network bar, and for the results, you will always select a separate wrapper load. Everything, basically, in the HTML body that we need, we've done everything. Let's look at the page. Okay, now we will hide this. And as you can see, 3 elements, no additional, do not create any load. Next, for this block, we need to create CSS and create JS so that it hides by default and shows up when you click on search. Now let's think about where we will add this according to the logic. It would seem the icon is in our header, so we need to edit the header files. Moreover, this block has everything necessary. That is, the header block has both Vue.js, where we can put the JS, and style.css, where we can consequently put the styles. But in such cases, even if it thematically relates to the header block, I don't add this code to the header block. Do you know why? Because I can display this search and make it supported by other blocks, meaning I can also use some element with the same class in another block and attach it. This search will be loaded onto it. Essentially, it is now linked to the footer, and it is technically. These lines will be present on all pages of my site. Therefore, I can attach an action. 2. Initiate the search for opening by the parent, and after opening, dynamic loading of games onto any component can occur. For this reason, I ignore the directories with blocks. They are kind of left only for static information, but I move to the global files of our template. GameStore CSS for the CSS territory, and in particular, GameStore femrelated.js for JavaScript. Therefore, the first thing we need is to go to CSS. Moreover, this pop-up is only on the front end. We don't need it in the admin panel. Therefore, we confidently write this code here. First, we will hide it because by default it is closed display. 2. The second, we should only show it on click, so let's go to JS and write such a simple code. We'll select query selector by class. I'm interested in this icon. It has the class. Header edge, I will copy it. And I add event click to it. And event click. And when clicking on this element, I will search for another element. I will search for it in the array selector by this class. Essentially, we are now building a kind of full site editing theme, a block theme, but as you can see, we can apply it, such techniques, from a classic theme. That is, we will use Ajax in the following lessons, as well as hooks. We write in PHP within the plugin. So essentially we are creating something hybrid, a hybrid theme. We end up combining different methods. That is, we select our element and we need to add a display block to it. So we write display and set the parameter to block as well. The most will need to be done already at the closing for the closing. We use such a method, by the way. Here they set it. We can find, it's cool. Just class close to switch. There is a high probability that it will specifically appear in various plugins. In my project, no. But when we use such very trivial names for classes in the future, the site administrator installs additional plugins, conflicts arise, that ruin the layout on the site, meaning some blocks shift. Therefore, it is recommended either to use a prefix in naming or not to use very superficial ones. Well, we will take the risk of using by key. They started ID, let it be ID all. So here we just have, it will be document, get element by ID. And we will set this ID in this way. And when clicking on this close, we will close our container. Display to refresh the page. Scroll to the end. We have nothing because we hid it. If we click, scroll down, it is displayed, meaning we have implemented the trigger for opening and closing. Next, we need to define the styles, so let's move on to the styles. First of all, its positioning will be fixed. Attach it to the edges. Top 0, all left 0. Right, whoa, bottom 0. Set the width and height to 100%. Set this index so that it is above our website. Set the background. Let's look. So in both versions, both dark and light, we have the same background. There is no separation here. So background, we have the following one. I click on it and copy to the clipboard and set it here. This background further besides this background. Note that the background is blurred, so there is some additional property here. Now we will extract it. Here it is, yes. Select the element and see. Backdrop filter. 8 pixels. So, this property must be added, otherwise there won't be such a beautiful effect. Next, and what else about the design? We have 48 pixels at the top here. There is also some at the bottom, but I don't add them because it should go all the way to the bottom. And there will be a custom scroll just for this section, so for now, only the top padding. Add. One top 48. Padding. Bottom. 0. In principle, it can be not updated as it is by default. Nero. And God sizing border box. So that's enough. Note that we are currently in the USSR. We are not using a preprocessor in this file, so we cannot write class nesting here. They will not be interpreted if we are in blocks. There we have a preprocessor and files are compiled. Here it is a simple sys. It's not very convenient if you're used to writing nesting like I am. You can move this code to a block file, but then we kind of lose in versatility. We won't be able to use it in other places. Next, element. Let's style this icon. We have access to it by class. Actually, not by class, but by ID. So I write a hash symbol. So, its size is approximately 48. It is positioned absolutely. It is offset by 24 pixels. So, top 24. Pixels, cursor, set pointer, and the background itself directly. We take his from here. Well, and here the icon inside is up to 20 pixels by 48, but now we will try to integrate it. Convert this into a background. Add and specify Santa. But, repeat, because it is smaller than 48, and we throw center. And do not repeat. Next, we can add hover to it so that it reacts somehow when hovered over. Forgot what it is. CSS wanted to add nesting already. Opacity 70%, and add transition so that everything is smooth. All right, let's take a look at how our background looks. Refreshing the page. We start the search, and the background looks quite good. The blur is beautifully displayed. And the closing also works perfectly. We continue to style the elements. The next element we style is probably this search label. So I will create for it such a composite selector. Just a selector safe label. I won't add it. Maybe I already have. I know from practice that it is often used in different plugins and conflicts arise. So let's take the style. We have a heading there. So what heading, by the way? H3. Let's set it to H2. Well, what? The size is 54 pixels are specifically set for H2. And in principle, everything we have here, we remove. No need to center it, especially not necessary to center it. Margin button. Let's add 48 pixels and even a field for the button. We won't add it. We will use a bar, address it, and its display. Flex direction column. Gap 48 pixels. In such a moment, we have a color set dynamically on the heading. If I change to a light palette, go in to see what's happening, meaning we need to track this moment for the heading as well. Still, let's set the color. Therefore, we do it this way for the whole, and here is a static color. I remind you that this black and the background are shown in both versions. And even if we are in the light version, now we have it in white, so we style the input. on the input. We have an ID set, therefore I address it like this. Let's see what styles we have. Let's blindly copy, just cut everything out. Then there is height, padding is needed. Flex, direction, no. Everything related to flex is not needed. Border radius 5 outline. Divider, input. I don't think we have that color here. Let's create it. Or the second option, we will create it. But later, if it appears in the block, here we have the dark version. So the color will always be here without variables. And the same applies to the background here. We pass it without variables, just like we created for the container. We'll take for text or for the forms, for input of style, it would be worth specifying separately in this file, but when we develop some contact form, then we will have them. Here, after all, it is custom in this pop-up PE. So we use this approach. Just like this. Let's add box sizing. Border box, then now to the 60, 16 is added on top, 16 at the bottom, plus 14 the height increases. Now it will be corrected. So the font looks a little different. Specifically here in the layout, the font is incorrect. Here, Ubuntu is used, but we are using Urbanist. Therefore, we will specify the font family, Urbanist. And for the placeholder, we probably need to set a color. I'll leave it as is because it's quite acceptable. No, my task is not to make it 100%. Now it looks better. Next, let's check this margin. Looks too large. No, everything is fine. Just need to color this element. Copy its style. The margin for the button will be 24 pixels. The color, I also set it here as static without a variable. Even if something in the style doesn't match somewhere, I think it's not a big deal. And let's check in the dark version. Everything looks great. With this, we conclude this lesson. And in the next lesson, we will continue working on dynamics. We will first connect to the server and request default games. That is, the moment we open this search, it will load for us. And then we will implement it further. The search functionality itself. See you in the next lesson.